Hi, my name is Dr. Laura Hunt, and I'm going to talk about how we can use the ladder of abstraction to come up with applications for our Bible messages. So let's start with Deuteronomy 22:8. Deuteronomy 22:8 says, "When you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof." Now, if we're going to first move up the ladder of abstraction, moving up, we should ask the question why. Now, the question why should we make a parapet for our roof, is easy to answer in this case because the rest of the verse tells us why. Otherwise, you might have blood guilt on your house if anyone should fall from it. In the ancient world, people hung out on the roof. It was built flat, and it was a place where you could go in the morning or the evening to catch a cool breeze. But of course, if you're going to have people hanging around on a flat roof, you need a parapet or a railing around the roof to make sure that nobody falls off. And so if we ask the question, why should we build a parapet around the roof? The Bible tells us in this instance that it's to prevent injury. Now we can go even farther up our ladder of abstraction and we can say, well, why would we want to prevent injury? And here the answer, I think, is because preventing injury is an expression of loving our neighbor, and we are to love our neighbor. And so that's what we do with especially a Bible verse that's really grounded in the ancient world, in ancient culture, is we take it and we put it in the middle of the ladder of abstraction and we say, well, why would we do this thing? And we move up the ladder and get more and more general in the reasons for this specific application. And then, in order to be able to apply it to our world, our specific culture, we begin to move down the ladder of abstraction. So we're going to take this specific Bible verse of the ladder and we're going to say, how? How should we love our neighbor, specifically in preventing injuries in our specific culture? And one way to do that in the same kind of an environment that they were talking about, the building of a new house, is we say, oh, when we're building a new house, one of the ways we can prevent injury and therefore love our neighbor is to follow the codes, to make sure our houses are up to code. And that way, that's going to reduce the likelihood that people are going to get hurt. Well, again, we can move down the ladder of abstraction another rung and say, well, okay, how are we going to love our neighbor? One way is to prevent injury. How are we going to prevent injury? One way is to follow the codes. Well, then how are we going to follow codes? Well, one way to do that is to make sure our stairs are even. I have an older house. The stairs aren't always all that even. So making sure my stairs are even would be one way that I could prevent injury, specifically in my own house. Now, when we come up with the Bible application, then there's a couple things we want to look at. First of all, you want to be as specific as you can. If you give the people listening to you some sort of general application, help people not to get hurt, they're likely to forget about it. And particularly for our purposes, for the purposes of our assignment, you're going to want to be very specific. Now, as you get specific, it's going to be important that you think about all the various kinds of people in your congregation. I've often heard complaints about churches that, for example, applications only relate to people who are married. And so you want to make sure you think about all the different kinds of people in your congregation, the young and the old, the married and the unmarried, the more educated and the less educated, women as well as men, all of those different kinds of people, and make sure that the applications you choose are going to work for all those different kinds of people. Now, for the assignment, I want you to choose something that's attainable, that's realistic. Don't give some people something that they're going to try to apply the Bible and it's just going to be really unrealistic for most people. But the second thing I want you to think about for this particular assignment is that it needs to be measurable. That means people need to be able to put it on their to-do list for the week and check it off. So rather than telling them, for example, I want you to meditate on this verse, maybe you ask that how question and you say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write this Bible verse and I want you to tape it to your bathroom mirror and I want you to read it every morning when you're brushing your teeth. That's a measurable thing. People can come back the next week and say, yes, I did that. You might even tell them at least 3 times this week, I'd like you to do that. And that is measurable. They can know whether or not they've done it. Now, one example for the Bible verse we looked at is you might end your sermon by saying, this week, as you dream about the improvements you wish you could make to your house or apartment, stop and think about how you might make them in a way that's safe for others. And then look around your house for something you could improve right now. Replace the batteries in the smoke detectors. Make sure the rugs are flat so they won't trip people. Put baby guards in your toddler level electric outlets, especially if you have toddlers that regularly show up at your house. If you own a gun, double check that it's unloaded and in a secure gun safe. So now you've given your congregation a range of different, very specific applications that they can make for your sermon.